Very good evening, everyone. And as I say, for the grand finale, this panel needs no introduction. I could easily call this, or I should call this, the first family of Indian retail. It's an absolute honor to be getting a chance to speak to the Biyani family. As I said, no introduction needed, but as we were researching for this panel, there were a few things that really stood out for me in terms of the conversations that Kishore Bhai has had over his journey, and the philosophy by which he and his family has created this business. And the one thing that sort of really stuck me was his thing about creation and destruction is a part of the same cycle. And he says we believe in destroying what we have created, and that has been the ethos of what the group has stood for and how they have consistently reinvented themselves. Your autobiography, It Happened in India, is really a page turner about how you created this business from grounds up. And one of the beliefs that he's always stood for is that there is more joy in creating than working for someone else, and that's come alive in his journey. Known as the king of retail, he's popularly known as KB. We share our initials, but that's where the commonality ends, Kishore Bhai, I think. And what an incredible journey, and I'm really honored to be speaking to you today. And we also have the young scions of the Biyani family, the future group, Ashni and Avni Biyani, who in their own right have also created a very strong space for themselves in the industry. Ashni is the brain behind the Future Consumer, the group's FMCG business, and Avni conceptualized and leads Food Hall, among other things. And Food Hall is the group's gourmet food chain, and someplace I love to go to right across my street. And build with the same customer centricity and passion that you've inherited from your father. It was an absolute delight talking to you up just before this session, and what stood out for me was the simplicity among all three of you. That was really one characteristic that stood out. And most of you may not know that both these young ladies have not really graduated in what you would imagine easily as some management school, but Ashni she studied design, and Avni had studied sociology. So they get their business skills straight from their father, and walking the malls or the shops, as they would sort of call it. Such a pleasure to have. I'm going to start with Kishore Bhai, with yourself. You are one of the few people in this country who, and maybe even beyond, who've created something from absolute scratch within your lifetime. And not everything that you've done has worked out for you. You've failed many times. But that has not stopped you from consistently reinventing and experimenting. And you said very famously, those who sleep are the only ones who don't make a mistake. Can you tell us how this belief has shaped the Future Group? It'll be great to hear from you.
I think when we started the business, we were ignorant in a sense. I had not studied so much, and ignorance allows you to do too many things. And I believe whenever we try to create a new thing, we still are quite ignorant about it because we are not aware of each and everything. Sometimes our ignorance helps us to create something. So sometimes when you are more knowledgeable, you make a business plan, you make so much of detailed study, and you are lost in understanding that. I think our idea is to create prototypes, test it in a real environment, and do multiple things. And when you try to do too many things, you make a lot of mistakes, and you fail in many things, and you succeed in something. So I think it's been an interesting journey of trying to understand India, which is also a very unique country in its own right. We don't have a reference point to whatever we create, so in a sense you have to be original. And we try and keep on doing something. So failure has been a part of doing many things in our life.
And in your journey of being an entrepreneur, you started in '92 with the first Pantaloon store, I'm told. What is the biggest disruption that you have faced, and what is the biggest disruption that you have created in your lifetime?
I think, like we always say, the next big thing, the next thing which we are doing will be the biggest disruption in a way. So when we conceptualized Big Bazaar, I think it was an interesting disruption because I had not seen a Walmart till then. I had not seen a hypermarket in my life. And we conceptualized the bazaar of India coming into a better environment. And that's how we conceptualized it. So, and today it's a very different store than the way we had done it then. So I think it was a kind of a revolutionary thing. Secondly, in terms of how do you acquire customers, we did something very interesting, which was again very different, very disruptive. So, and now I think the next big disruptive thing which we are doing is how do you look at data to do business and removing all the guts from your decision making. We believe 95% of our decisions will be taken over by machines. So that will be a very, very disruptive thing what we have been doing because we are not used to be doing things wherein machines takes decisions.
I'll come back to that point on data and AI later on. But before, we were talking earlier about yours is a people business. And what matters the most in a people's business is the culture you set up in an organization. So what are the key ethos of the culture that you've established for your group? And I'd then love to ask Ashni and Avni on how do they see that playing? Do they have a different point of view? Are they adding to that, or are they following the key ethos that you have set up?
I think the first credo which we wrote for ourselves was rewrite rules and retain values. And we wrote down our values. And our values are imparted to the lowest level. Everyone in our organization will live by that values. So our values are very simple. It's one of the first value is Indianness, simplicity is another value, positivity, introspection, and flow. That's something which we follow in every part of our decision making. Follow the laws of nature. So very simple values, but adaptability is another value which we have, and we map people on the kind of values everybody who works with us represent. And we also have created another organization thing that belief will drive behavior and behavior will drive all the outcomes. So every outcome is a result of a behavior which comes out of the beliefs. So how can we shape the beliefs of each and everybody working with us, and we work on some common beliefs. So we work a lot around building that common beliefs in the organization and the people whom we work with.
Fabulous. Ashni, can I have a word from you on how do you see this play out, and do you have a different point of view which adds on to that, or is this pretty much your belief in terms of the culture you are setting in your part of the business?
So I think we are an FMCG business, but at the core, these are human values. And it's these human values that we have imbibed across the organization irrespective. We may have built further values to this. So we have a very deep sense and a focus on the quality culture, for example. But I mean, that is what is important for an FMCG business. But the core human values remain sacrosanct. In fact, the way we translate and live out and make sure these values get imbibed in the organization is through symbols, rituals, and stories. And this is the mythological way of how we've understood and interpreted values or morals or whatever that was being imparted to us. And we use the same, we use symbols, stories, and rituals to propagate these values and also to imbibe them more and more every day. So, for example, we have this saying in our organization that customer is the God, retail is the religion, stores are a temple, and the brands are the bhog or the prasad that we offer to these customers. And now through this we actually bring alive the entire feeling that all decisions finally are for the customer. Anything that we may or may not do works is all for the customer. The customer tells us what is right or wrong. So we try and live this out in these ways.
Fabulous, very well said. Customer is the God.
Retail is our religion.
Retail is the religion.
Store is the temple. And our brands is the bhog.
Fabulous, well said. This is a tweet-worthy comment. We'll come back to that later. But Avni, your perspective on this, please.
I don't really think, as Ashni said, these are human values. These are personal values as well. And whether you're hiring someone or whether you're talking to your team, I think these values very much remain at the back of your mind. All three of us also work on the 0 to 1 piece, which Dad calls the creation piece. And another big value of our group is also thought leadership. So anything that we create, anything that we conceptualize has to have a leadership trait to it. It has to make sense. It has to have a certain scale. It has to have a certain size. It needs to impact a certain number of people, either quantitatively or qualitatively. So I think these are all mantras that I think we live by and we work by, and it's not something that's, I think it's just something that you continue to live with. Even positivity, going with the flow. These are very simple decisions that, we've been taught by Dad to, imbibe in day-to-day life. So every time I tell him that, oh, we have this problem or we have that problem, he keeps on telling me, be positive. Every adversity will find you a positive outcome. why don't you just go with the flow, do something else? So I think, and in a country like India, going with the flow is very, very important. So I think these are values that hold the test of time as well.
It's really starting to show up that you really, really look up to your father. I'm going to come back to that later on. Now, I remember a meeting, Kishore Bhai, with you about an year ago when our global chairman was in town. And you said in the conversation something very interesting about your organization representing the diversity of the country. And we were talking about the conversation on diversity and inclusion, and that's when you made this comment. Can you just share your core belief on diversity and how you look at this subject and bring it alive in your organization?
I think we work consciously to represent India in our workforce. The communities, the ethnic groups, the religion centricness of that individual, and the sex ratios. And we work towards representing them in our kind of people force. And we believe that helps us to understand India better and to help us to serve our customers who represent exactly the same diversity which we represent in our stores.
Great. Now, I'm going to come back to the point that you made on data and your latest vision, your newest vision that you have come out on retail, and you call it Tathastu, is a data-led business. I'll come back to the point on e-commerce later, but can you talk a little bit about, a lot of us have in our generation, and I'm for now putting myself in your generation for a minute, we have been brought up with making decisions on gut. Call it, there was no data or lack of data, but we've been trained to take decisions on gut. Here you are coming up with a different point of view. Can you talk about the movement from gut-based decisions to data-based decisions and your larger philosophy around your Tathastu vision on retail?
I'll tell you an incident which happened with me maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I don't remember the exact date, maybe 3.5 years ago. I met a gentleman, I'll name him also, Bhatto Sikapuria. He is one of the partners of 3G Capital.
Okay.
And he came down one day and we spent the day together. And while he was going, I asked him one question: how do you remove emotions from decision making? Because we were becoming a large organization. And he told me data. Mm-hmm. And I was not a technology person in our organization. Rakesh deals with technology more, Vivek deals with technology more, and I can hardly use my phone. And then it got me thinking and I moved into technology. And I discovered that technology can only do 3 things. It can reduce space, mm-hmm. reduce time, and create social interaction. And that's how we designed our whole new organization to work on collecting data. So we created small stores which were kind of stores to collect data, because we only make members so that we can see a pattern in the spending of the consumers. And from that data, I think we created multiple loyalty programs which are totally data-led, frequency-led. And this data is now being used. We believe this data is probably one of the most richest data in the country in a way, because we know consumer spending patterns and we can forecast quite a lot from that data. How do I use this data now to do business and increase our business, create assortment in the stores, know where to open the store, know what to sell, how to sell, when to produce, when to ship. I think now we are creating something called a digital nervous system of our organization, wherein the entire organization will run on that digital nervous system based on the data which we have collected. So I think we will have a data of more than 3 crore people, deep data of people who shop more than 8 times a year with us. From that, we predict, forecast, we manufacture, we supply, we do everything out of that data.
And you are now about 1,400 stores and counting.
The small stores, yes.
The small stores. Where do you see this going, and where do you see in terms of the, we'll call it the traditional mom and pop retail, how do you see the two play around? Do you see complement, conflict? How do you see that happening?
I think India is a huge, huge country. We add up $80 billion of new consumption every year. And we believe there are so many players which are required. And secondly, we are consuming much, much more than what we used to consume. A smaller retailer, a Kirana store, sells 300 to 600 SKUs. Our smallest store sells around 3,000 SKUs. So I think things are very different. You have to, for a normal person, he has to go to 4 shops to complete his shopping. I think with us, they can complete the shopping in one single store and maybe get much, much more than what the others can offer. So I believe with the existence of everybody together, India is changing, consumers are changing, their preferences are changing, and we'll have to deal with that preferences. And supply needs to be created. So I believe mom and pop stores will always be on the side of what we are. They have a lot of strengths, and we'll have to build our strengths. In fact, to compete with them is not so easy. In fact, I think they can beat us, and they have beaten us till now.
Interesting, interesting. Thank you. But knowing you and how you've executed in the past, I'm sure this will come real faster than you originally conceived. Ashni, I'm going to come to you now. You are a believer in the group's core value of fail fast, learn fast. And share with some examples on how are you bringing it alive with the amount of transformation work that you are doing in your FMCG business.
So I think we are, we're born on the backbone of a modern retail company. We are ignorant in that sense about FMCG. We are building it on our own terms and own conditions. We are a multi-category FMCG company, value integrated. I think so and we are the most customer proximate FMCG company. So one of the things that we have done is we've built brands in over in around 45 odd categories across food, home care, personal care, beauty. And these brands have been built with the imagination of serving this fast-moving consumer generation. For us, we have a motto to say that we give it 6 months for any of our brands, product categories to work. And then I chair a session in our group called Let's Destroy, where we objectively look at data and see which of these products are not firing with the customer, where there is a genuine concern. And when we have the audacity to create, also have the audacity to withdraw. So I think that's the way in which we are learning, failing, and then again learning back again and giving the customer really what is required. So being a customer proximate company allows us to make mistakes, but also allows us to correct them even faster. We're the richest data FMCG company, and those are the strengths on which we are building this organization and learning to fail only to succeed.
Now tell me, I want to ask you a question, a corollary of this one. Have you ever felt emotionally connected to a brand you've created, a product you have launched, and you said, I don't care whether I lose money, I'm going to go do this, whatever it takes?
No, I think I learned to not have those emotions when I have to face my board and the investors. So.
All right, thank you. Ashni, I want to come to you. Well, you're both millennials, but I have a question on managing millennials. You have a largely a millennial team, and it was interesting to say that you run a 50% plus diversity in your team, and you need more men in your head office, you told me. But talk to us about the biggest challenge you have in terms of managing a millennial workforce, and also in the second part of the question, what's your father's view of a millennial culture and aspirations?
I think he loves the millennial workforce. He gets really excited. He tells everybody in food hall, this brand was created by a 24-year-old. This brand is run by a 28-year-old. So I think he gets very excited about it. So managing a millennial workforce is tough. I think, I run a very passion-led business, and I have a lot of passion for like food and the kind of things we do. So it's great to have a millennial team because they embody and they echo that passion. They're fully up there with all the trends and the complete know-how, and sometimes they know more than me, which is great. But at the same time, I think there needs to be a balance with wisdom, as we call it. Mm-hmm. There needs to be a greater drive on data, a greater drive on numbers. So I think these are all, and also a certain level of maturity, which obviously, since millennials are young and they haven't worked for so long, but I think that's where we know how to balance it out. So for every millennial team member, there's a mentor, who's providing some sort of wisdom or some sort of guidance to them on how to lead a brand or how to build relationships or how to speak to customers, how to sell more to customers.
Got it. Have you ever felt in your journey with a large millennial-centric workforce, have you ever felt the need to have experienced people on the team?
Yeah, I think you feel it on a daily basis, especially because the customer that we deal with at Food Hall is also older. So sometimes to understand your customer who is older, you need to also be able to understand their pain points and their aspirations and their wants from a store. And also we work in a category and we work in an environment where customers expect a lot and customers want things fast. So definitely I think there has to be constant effort and constant work being done to bridge that dissonance and that gap, because you're speaking to housewives, you're speaking to people who are in their 50s, 40s who like to cook. Now, a lot of millennials are 25, 27 and they don't understand, the pain points a housewife would face, or, CEO of a business who wants to cook on Sunday mornings for his daughter.
Interesting. I want to have one quick advice from you and Ashni yourself on what is your coaching advice to budding entrepreneurs?
I mean, I don't think of myself old enough to give advice, but if I just still had to say something, I would say that I think you have to keep learning, and creating a learning mindset is the most critical. And your customers teach you everything, so just work with the customers and have the learning mindset. So.
I think our generation, my generation especially, thinks a lot. I've been speaking to a lot of my friends, and I feel like before starting something out or before like starting something new, I think people think a lot, they calculate a lot. It's very personal. What am I going to get after 3 years? What am I going to get after 5 years? I think by experience we never did that. We just like, it was again such a go with the flow sort of a concept for us. I think life evolves, your journey evolves, you meet people along the way, it takes you places. Like we were not trained to plan. So my advice would be don't plan too much, like let things just evolve naturally. If you believe in something, just go after it.
One regret in your life?
None.
Professional?
Professionally, many. There's a regret every day.
Any in yours, Ashni? Any regret that you recall that I wish I had not done this?
There are many what I wish I had done kind of regrets.
Positive way of thinking. That's great. Kishore bhai, I want to bring the conversation back to e-commerce conversation. You know, your views are very widely known and sometimes also taken to an extreme on e-commerce. I want to know from you, you've said that it's a tough act because of the cost structures. You have a very clear model in mind about why the cost structures will not support standalone e-commerce. But what do you have to say about it today, given the amount of investments that are going in e-commerce? Will you ever take a plunge in full-blown e-commerce the way it is being done today?
I think e-commerce in India compared to China or any other markets, it's a very expensive model. The cost of acquiring a customer, probably the highest in the world, maybe 10 times higher than anywhere else. The cost of discovery, as we call it, the cost of transaction, the cost of business is again the highest in the world by many folds, I would say 2-3 times. And the cost of fulfillment again probably is higher than 2 times than anywhere else in the world. So with this kind of cost structures, I don't think so any business model can sustain for a long period of time. So, and secondly, we didn't have a capacity in our balance sheet to do something like this, and we are not funded by the so-called biggies. Secondly, we also see that the new age businesses, the new economy as we call it, are companies with a lot of abundance. Abundance of people, abundance of resources, abundance of money, abundance of thoughts. And they try a lot, and whoever is the most funded, well funded or more efficient, I think they get the money, and it's the last man standing business. But I believe e-commerce has started in a different era, and physical commerce started in a very different era. I see them converging in the next 4 to 5 years, where technology adaptation by physical retailer also has been to a great extent. And we have created a new model, hybrid model, which no one else in the world has done, creating stores on technology, which can deliver to your customers. Like we have started delivery from an app, which is a conversational commerce. Our member can order whatever and it can be delivered to him within a half an hour. So one can do a lot through technology now. And I believe the combination of physical and digital, for us in our small store, our cost of acquiring a customer is positive because they pay money to become a member. The cost of discovery is virtually zero because I already created that establishment. And the cost of fulfillment is the lowest because the customer is living 2 kilometers from me. So I think if you can create a model which can sustain in the long term, will be the model, because we don't have that kind of capital. And we'll have to conserve our resources to do business. And we don't have any other option but to do that. Had I got the money and I had somebody funded me, I would have done the e-commerce.
Okay, that's interesting. So you would have done it if you had access to the kind of capital?
If I had access to capital, I would have done it. And till the time I had access to capital, in fact, we started before Flipkart, futurebazaar.com.
Got it.
We were funded by good venture capitalists then, but the money got over.
Interesting. Okay. You also have spoken, you've coined the term actually India 1, India 2, India 3, and you have businesses that address India 1, India 2 and 3 as well. And your view is that entrepreneurs should be committed to creating jobs in India 2 and India 3. Can you give us a peek of what you are planning to do on India 2 and India 3? And maybe for the sake of people, you can also define how you call it.
So we created a definition based on the way Indian society is. And India 1 is the people, anybody who has domestic help, I coined them as India 1.
Okay.
India 2 is the people who make the India 1's life better by providing them whatever services, the helpers, the peons, the drivers, the watchmen, the liftmen. And there are a host of other services which we get, why we belong to India 1. And then India 3 is the people who live below the sustained class, the labor class, the construction workers. And so India 1 consumes more than 100,000 SKUs in their lifetime. So they are huge on consumption. India 2, I think there is a lot of interesting thing happening in India 2. The next generation of India 2 is a very interesting generation, which is aspirational, which are these delivery boys, the bikers. It's a new India emerging, and they are millennials again, wanting to consume much, much more. But India 2 consumes only, the India 2, erstwhile India 2 consumed only 10,000 SKUs in their lifetime. And India 3 hardly consumes 1,000 SKUs. That's not changing much. But India 2A, India 2 or 1A is emerging, and I believe that is what is shaping India. And our effort was to deal with all these Indias in terms of how consumption can happen. So we had, on the food side, we had Foodall, Big Bazaar, Easy Day, and we have a model of Aadhaar, which goes into small towns of population of less than 50,000. So we operate in population of 5,000, 10,000. So we have created models for each and every segment of the population. And in fashion, again, we deal with all the segment of the population through our multiple formats, Central, Brand Factory, FBB. So,
and do you think there is money to make in serving India 2 or largely India 3?
I think India 2, there is money to be served because they consume 10,000 SKUs, and that's not less.
Right.
To make money out of India 3, I don't think so. We have discovered a model yet. So there is no fortune at the end of pyramid for us.
Got it. So from your perspective, the pyramid largely ends at
They
India
hardly
2.
consume.
Okay, got it. All right, I want to now get to a little bit of a personal question here and talk to the young ladies about what do you think are the strengths and weaknesses? And you don't look at him while you're talking. You can either look this side or look at me. Strengths.
He does it with weaknesses every day.
Okay, but now everybody wants to know. The nation wants to know now. So why don't you talk about the strengths and weaknesses of Kishore Bhai? Let's see who goes first. That'll tell me.
I think his biggest strength is that he has a vision and an imagination that is unmatched, actually, at least the way I see it. I think his vision and imagination on the Indian consumer and the consumption canvas of this country is unparalleled, and his idea of looking at business in this value integrated way is really what is exemplary for me. I think one of his biggest weaknesses is his lack of patience. He has just no patience and he can't detail, so we have to do all the dirty work.
I would have virtually said the same, but now we'll have to find some other points. I think his one of his weaknesses also will be when he likes an idea, he likes it too much. So he can be faulted for sometimes spending too much time on a certain project or a certain idea. I think he gets over passionate about it. I mean, till date, I think the kind of risks and the kind of bets he can make on the Indian consumer, dispassionately, I wouldn't find anyone else who could be able to make that, and the kind of risks he's willing to take. Even today, with a constricted balance sheet or without having as many investors backing you, I think we have to always prove ourselves after doing something. So in that sense, the kind of risks and the kind of audacious goals he sets for himself is also probably his biggest strength.
Great. I've in my brief interaction with him, I think his biggest strength is how he disarms people with his simplicity, and we experienced it when I met him with our chairman. So that's his biggest strength. I want to ask you a question about them and about their styles of management. Have you seen them enter into conflict and how do you help them navigate conflict, or do you help them navigate any conflicts at all?
So Ashni is she's a deep thinker. So whenever I need advice, I go to her. So on people issues, I think she can understand human beings, interpersonal issues, especially I think we have a lot of young and women and very diverse workforce, and I think she understands that space interestingly well, and she can find a complex problem, a very reasonable and a great solution which I can't look at. I think her eye for detailing, a woman's eye is very different than a man's eye, so that's the way I approach her for my issues. Avni is a go-getter. Avni is a perfectionist. I'm not a perfectionist at all. And she runs a business where you have to be quite perfect. So I think she's very different than what I am. So in a way, and secondly, but she seeks a lot of advice whenever she has a challenge. So I think that's the great thing about her. And even Ashni. So they all come to for wisdom and some advice where they are stuck up. And I think that's our relationship. I don't she'll never let me enter her business. And so she'll never let me go to her stores also.
How is it?
She'll always tell me that the people will get occupied and they will not be able to serve the customers. So rightly so, I don't visit her stores as much as what I should. And I think Ashni also now, she's taken up the mental, and so I think they all want their space.
Fabulous. I want to just cap with one question back to you again, Kishore Bhai. Clearly, your values have reflected. It's sort of clear in the conversation now and earlier as well. Your entrepreneurial skill sets have rubbed off as well. But what is the core values that they have brought to the group in your view? And how do you see this journey? How do you see them taking this journey forward?
Actually, we personally, I don't believe in succession. They all know about it. And I don't think we are creating business so that they can run. We are very clear what we want to do our business. So KB, which is your initial also, which is my initial, is known for Kharido Becho nowadays. So no, we think very differently. I don't think businesses are created for perpetuity, for a family and a legacy to be given to somebody.
Got it.
I think they can decide if they are going to be the shareholder of that business, what to do in case they want to do something. But I don't think so. We have doctrinated them in a very different way of not to run businesses in the long term. It's too much of pain and too much of, I think, to manage things throughout in your lifetime. So, but one can develop their own passion. But I believe they enjoy doing business.
Fabulous.
And to run a business with such complications and with such kind of environment in India is not so easy.
I can imagine. Absolutely. Now, we're about at the close of our conversation, but no conversation with any Karan can end without a rapid fire round. So I'm going to pull out a rapid fire round. This is a rabbit out of the hat, but I can tell you I have no gift hampers. You can buy your hampers from Food Hall, by the way. It is, okay, there you go. There is the healthy competition playing
Yeah,
up.
she came to the store the other day and she said, you should remove these candies from here, it's dangerous. So my store manager came and said, Ashni ma'am said it's dangerous. I was like, what's dangerous? She said, my kid will want it.
Great. So I'm going to have a quick rapid fire round, going a few questions across. From all of you, this question, one word on the future of retail in India. Why don't you start?
Future Group.
Okay, good. I'll give it to you. It's 2 words, but I'll give it to you.
Own brands.
Okay.
Experiences.
Okay, great. One question to both of you. Kishore Bhai, father or businessman first?
Father.
Father.
Okay, good. There was no conflict on that. Kishore Bhai, question to you. IQ and EQ. Who would you associate first with these attributes between Ashni and Avni?
I think Ashni IQ, she EQ.
Okay, great, clear. You guys are very clear. Now, question for all of you. Profitability versus massive customer acquisition. Which one would you choose? What comes first?
Earlier it was
Profitability.
customer acquisition, now it's profitability.
Profitability.
Good, great. We had this conversation India 1, 2, 3, and in a different way I asked this question to all of you. India or Bharat?
I think it's the same.
Okay?
For
From
us
a business standpoint.
Yeah, from a business standpoint, for us, India is more aspirational, so I'd say India.
Okay?
Mine is like top India, so
Your business is
my
right at the top.
business is.
Okay, India. Great. And I have a couple of questions on attributes. So experience, I asked you this question in an earlier part as well, but experience, is it overrated?
I would say wisdom is not overrated.
Okay?
No, experience is not overrated, but I think it's a good idea to find a balance between energy and experience.
Okay?
I'd have to say the same.
Fabulous. We all have this conversation about performance versus potential. Which one are you a fan of, performance or potential?
I think performance.
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 Potential.
Okay, good. Some conflict on the table? Well, we can go on, but I'm very mindful of time. It has been super talking to you. Thank you very much for the open conversation, and I hope everybody enjoyed. So I'm going to give the people in the room one round of questions, CJ, if that's okay.
Sure, sir.
And we'll see if there are any questions, and then we'll close, please.
So I have a question, if I may.
Oh, sure, please.
This question is for Kishorji. Sir, I'm a professional stand-up comedian. What is the role that humor has played in your life, if any, from a personal or business context? And I noticed that Ashni is laughing at that one because she obviously has some point of view on that. So I'll let sir answer that question first, and then Ashni, whatever came to your mind.
Should I answer or?
Please. You, sir.
I think if I don't crack a joke within 5 minutes of my any conversation with anybody, I'm gone. And they always, when they are around, they will always call it a PJ.
Well, I'm called Papa CJ, so maybe.
I think if you have to find out whether he's engaged, we explained that he has no patience. Exactly, right?
Yeah, he's on Twitter in all the meetings.
You have to just see if he's cracked up or said something silly, expecting someone to laugh or not.
Fair play. Thank you.
I'm Kamlesh Thakur. My question to you, Kishorji. Do you have so much dependence on data analytics? Do you do this in-house or do you outsource it?
I think it's in-house.
And do you do it in-house in multiple teams or the same team?
I think we are in the process of building teams, and so, but it's currently, there are multiple teams, but it converges at one place because we have a data lake which is one, and that's the source of data for everyone.
And do you believe that there should be only a certain percentage of your cost of data analytics to revenue that you generate on that?
No, we have a new organization called Tatastu, a new office with 400 people. They only work on converting data into business, and we measure the results every week. And so today was that review. So we measure on through this data what extra business we have done, and it's very interesting. We believe 10% of our business is already happening through data. As we go forward, I think we'll touch 50-60%.
Very interesting.
I'm talking of incremental business.
Yeah, very interesting.
And he just said that the initials KB mean Kabhi to Becho, so I just sold him a cognitive fashion use case outside just now.
Can we get the house lights up a little bit? Microphone to the lady there on the first table, and then this gentleman on the second table at the back as well.
So you said one of the values you have is go with the flow, and now you're going to the data side. So is there any conflict in that, or you think it's all going to merge?
I think there's no conflict in that because that's the machine which is taking over the decision. That's the way the workflows are written. And wherever we will come into play, I think our job will become of strategy, relationships, and designing, and managing exceptions. So I think our role will be very different, and that still will be going with the flow. Is a great value which helps us in not stopping and keep on moving on in life. So never get stuck up. I think there was a song called Ruk Jana Na Kabhi To Kahin Haar Ke. I think that's what we represent here.
Okay, thank you.
So my question to Kishore ji, you created this position Chief Belief Officer, and I understand that belief is the fundamental thing which is driving the behavior and then the action. So what would be the KPI of a belief officer is one question. Second is, what as per you is the purpose of life?
I will answer the second question first. The purpose of life is to do time pass. 24 hours a day we have to kill and we have to do something or the other. And I sincerely believe in this purpose of life. And I believe at the end of the day, you should feel that you have done something purposeful. And that is, I think human being has a great gift of imagination. And we imagine that we have done something purposeful. So, but I think that's where the theory of zero comes in. And the second question of belief officer, I think we, in our journey of doing business, we realized that I was kind of a born atheist, agnostic, I would say. And I started realizing that everything what we are doing has been written down in some form, in form of stories, in mythologies, and let's discover that, and let's learn that. And that's where the chief belief officer came in. Okay, everything in the world has been done. Nothing new is happening. So we understood our leadership model came out of that symbols of temples in India. From the Darshana to the Ikshu to the Gada to the Padma, which is the lotus flower. So we created a whole model out of mythology. So I think there is so much learning to be done from whatever happened in the past. There is nothing new which is happening.
Any more questions?
Well, great, Kishore bhai. Thank you so much for the great conversation. Thank you, Ashni and Avni. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.